One thing I've always loved about Clemson football is that they have a good mix of everything. They'll bring in their 5-star players, they'll bring in their 3-star players, and they'll even give their walk-ons a chance. The fact that their best receiver in school history is Hunter Renfrow is pretty insane. Dabo's the kind of guy who doesn't just look at stars when he's evaluating a player, and he always seems to take a risk or a flyer on a prospect who could pay extreme dividends down the road. That was the case for a recruit from the 2018 class. His name was Braden Galloway. He was from Seneca, South Carolina, which was located just down the street from Clemson. He was a 6'5" tight end who was an athletic freak and was new to the game of football. After he impressed at the high school level, Dabo took a flyer on him, and it paid off. Galloway had moments where he looked like the next big thing at Clemson, but unfortunately, he got in some off-the-field trouble and battled some other things, which ultimately led to him not panning out. At one point, I remember seeing mock drafts of having him in the first round, but unfortunately, after the 2022 draft, he went undrafted, and he is not even on a roster right now. In today's video, we're going to talk about the rise of Braden Galloway, what happened during his Clemson career, and ultimately, what went wrong. But before we can talk about him, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. We're on the road to 100K, and you're not going to want to miss out on a lot of great college football content this fall. If you want to support the channel, be sure to leave a like and a comment, as that really helps, and don't forget to turn on post notifications so you never miss when I do upload. Now let's go ahead and get started and talk about what happened to Braden Galloway. Going back in time, the Galloway family was always athletic, but football was not the first sport of choice for Braden and his older brother Brevin. Basketball would become their lives, and they both became pretty good at it. Both Brevin and Braden starred at Seneca High School, where Brevin was a 3-star recruit who helped lead them to the state playoffs while averaging over 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists a game. He was also a 3-time All-State and All-Region selection, and he eventually went on to play college basketball. Braden was also a superstar. He averaged over 20 points a game and had 8 rebounds a night, and he thought he was going to play college basketball with his brother at the College of Charleston. Except, he never got an offer from them, and he decided he was going to keep his options open. In 1 year, everything would change for Braden, as he'd go from an unknown first-time player to a kid who was committed to a national championship caliber school. How did this happen? Braden had never planned on playing football at Seneca until Hal Capps would arrive as the next Bobcats coach. He saw Galloway's potential immediately, and one day when he was walking down the hall, he convinced Braden to join the football team. He was a natural athlete, and Capps had high praise for him. He said, quote, "He is such a raw talent. 5 years from now, we might be watching him on Sundays." So why did this end up working out? Well, first, he had the physical and athletic traits to be a football star, and luckily he put it all together pretty quickly. He burst onto the scene in his first year of football as he caught 50 passes for more than 800 yards and 9 touchdowns. He was so good that he also played quarterback while catching and running for touchdowns. You could say he was a pretty big part of the offense. His coach said, quote, "Our whole offense is revolved around him being able to do things, get the ball to certain people, and especially throw the deep ball. That sort of changes when we make quarterback changes." Braden would eventually hurt his foot his senior year, and because of that, his season was cut short. This did not scare off big-time football attention, though. He did good enough that a school 10 miles away began to recruit him. That school was Clemson. After evaluating him, the Tigers invited him to an unofficial visit, and after that, he received an offer and pretty much committed on the spot, as 3 days later, he would give his pledge to the Tigers after the annual orange and white spring game. He chose the Tigers over the likes of NC State and South Carolina, as Braden had this to say, quote, "After praying and talking everything over with my parents and my coach, I feel like this is the best thing for me and my family. I want to thank all the schools who recruited me and believed in me. That hasn't been forgotten and won't be. But with all that being said, I will be ending my recruitment and I'll be committing to Clemson. Please keep all negative thoughts to yourself." At the time, he was considered a wide receiver in high school, but with his size and frame, he was going to move to tight end. Not only would he have to make that transition, but he'd also be under a lot of pressure along the way. When asked about the pressure the local community put on him, he had this to say, quote, "On the field, it's a lot of pressure just because people expect you to do big things, especially when it's only my second year playing. But I'm going to Clemson, so people still want me to do big things. But it is exciting, and I wouldn't have it any other way." He had gone from a star basketball player who didn't start playing football until his junior year to now being committed to arguably the second best program in all of college football. He was compared to Clemson superstar Jordan Leggett, and while Leggett was a blue chip recruit, Galloway was more of a diamond in the rough. According to 24/7 Sports, he was a 3-star recruit, the number 41 tight end, and the 858th best player in the class of 2018. So, how would he do? As a freshman, Galloway would catch 5 passes for 52 yards and a touchdown before he'd be hit with major news that would change the course of his career. He had tested positive for a banned substance and was banned from playing college football for an entire year. He obviously tried to appeal the decision, but that was ultimately denied, and he'd have to sit out the entirety of the 2019 campaign, but he was allowed to play in the college football playoff, where he did eventually catch 2 passes for 60 yards. This was tough, as it was a year away from football, he was in hot water, and it definitely stunted his development. That's what we thought. Galloway would return in 2020, and he'd actually put his name on the map. In their first game against Wake Forest, he'd catch 5 passes for 60 yards, and then he'd help them beat Virginia. It was at this time that some considered him to be a first-round prospect. He was an athletic freak, he was playing for Clemson, and he was starting to produce. By no means was Galloway a lock to be a first-round pick, but if he lived up to the hype and developed properly, then it could have happened. His best game of his career would come against number 7 Miami, as he'd catch 4 passes for 74 yards and 2 touchdowns, and many were excited to see how he would finish the season. It was sort of disappointing. He caught 5 passes for 33 yards against Syracuse, 3 passes for 46 yards in a loss to Notre Dame, and then 2 catches for 37 yards against Pitt. Slowly, his numbers started to change, he started to drop a lot more passes, and Trevor began to throw to other teammates. Clemson would end up getting to the ACC championship game, where Braden would catch 3 passes in that win, and then he'd get an opportunity to play in the college football playoff again, as he caught 2 passes for 38 yards in a loss to Ohio State. Braden would finish the 2020 season with 27 catches for 369 yards and 2 touchdowns. For a tight end, that wasn't that bad, but throughout the season, he noticeably got worse, he started to drop more passes, and it seemed like faith in him was beginning to dwindle. He'd have to figure that out in a big way in 2021, and unfortunately, not much happened. He only played in 2 games, where he caught a total of 4 passes for 14 yards. You must think that he got benched or injured, but that was not the case. He ended up playing in 6 games in 2021, but he just wasn't getting open and he wasn't making plays. To make things worse, he then got hit with the injury bug. He'd suffer a concussion against Boston College, and then after he returned, he would injure his labrum, which would end his career at Clemson. Instead of coming back for an extra year of eligibility, Galloway said that he was moving on to the next chapter of his life. He obviously declared for the 2022 NFL Draft, but the chances of him getting drafted were pretty much 0, where he would sign an undrafted free agent deal with the Chicago Bears. Galloway is not listed on their active roster, and it looks like he'll be moving into the next stage of his life that won't involve football. That is, unless he tries to go to a different league, like the CFL, XFL, or USFL, but overall, he's probably going to move on to that next stage. So what ultimately went wrong for Braden Galloway? Well, it was a combination of things. Him having to sit out that 2019 season due to the banned substance didn't help his development. He was known for dropping a lot of passes, he got hit with the injury bug, and then ultimately, there was just too much talent around him. Davis Allen emerged at tight end, and the Tigers always had a ton of receivers making plays around him, so if he wasn't standing out or making those plays, then he was going to get left behind, and he just wasn't good enough. He had all the athletic tools of a future pro, but combining all those factors, it just didn't work out for him, and he was not dealt a great hand of cards. Overall, it was fun watching Galloway at Clemson when he was on, and I do remember all the NFL hype around him. It's an unfortunate story, but I'm sure he's going to bounce back and do big things in the next stage of life. But what do you guys think? If you're a Clemson fan, what went wrong for Braden Galloway? If you're a fan of another school, give me another player I could take a look at in my next video. And before you go, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.
Thank you.